Hello everyone, welcome back to another Doctor Who review. In today's Doctor Who review I'm taking a look at the Celestial Toymaker animation. So the way this video is going to work, we're going to take a look at the presentation for the Steelbook, talk about the actual story itself, the animation, and we'll talk about the special features that feature within this release, and then give you my overall thoughts on this as a whole package. So without further ado, let's take a look at the presentation for the Steelbook. Presentation wise for the Steelbook, so we have this nice sort of spiral background with some of the various games within it. We have the Toymaker reaching for the TARDIS from the episode 3, sort of the dancing dolls. Interestingly, that they've used the wrong sort of TARDIS model within it. We have the Celestial Toymaker, the side release, so quite a vibrant spine, and again on the back we have the Trilogic game, the robot, and some of the pieces from Blind Man's Bluff. We have a little bio on the story, what the Steelbook includes. Removing the J card, we have the clean artwork there, and on the back we have the Trilogic game, and again some of the pieces from Blind Man's Bluff and the robot. Opening up the Steelbook, we have the disc. So disc 1 is the black and white animation, disc 2 is the colour animation, and we have a booklet covering the production details for this release, and of course the disc breakdown and watch on each disc. So that is the presentation for the Celestial Toymaker on Steel. Celestial Toymaker is one of those stories that over the years has been given this sort of legendary status amongst fans, and has sort of become, you know, one of the great lost stories within it. It's one of those stories people say, you know, if I could have a missing episode back, I'd want to see the Celestial Toymaker. I can see why this story has been given a bit of a legacy, because this could have been the first time we see the Doctor change his appearance and have a whole new actor taking on the role as the Doctor. And technically this story does that because we have another person playing William Hartnell's hands within it. But you know, this is the first story written by Brian Hales, who went on to write such classic stories and give us iconic monsters like the Ice Warriors and of course the Celestial Toymaker. So what do I think of this story? Well, I think that it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I have to say, when you start breaking down the story and the actual plot of it, not a lot happens within it, and I'll explain that as we'll do sort of a quick little rundown of the actual plot. So the story continues from where the arc left off, with the Doctor sort of vanished and they enter the Toymaker's domain as the scanner is showing this black void, but the scanner's not broken, because if it was broken it would have sort of static. So we are in the Toymaker's domain where the first Doctor and the Toymaker are off to play the Trilogic game, what has I think 1023 moves, while Dodo and Stephen are off to play against the Toymaker's puppets in these childish games that have deadly consequences. So the games Stephen and Dodo play, so we have Blind Man's Bluff, which I think the first half of the story is where it's quite slow, and I think the games kind of are drawn out a little bit too much. I think they could have been cut down a little bit. And then episode 2, we have this sort of riddle where they have sort of 7 chairs, 6 are deadly, and they've got to find the non-deadly chair. That's a tense 25 minutes, I tell you that. And then we have episode 3 where they have to find a key and go across this deadly dancing floor. And then episode 4 we have TARDIS hopscotch. So while Stephen and Dodo are playing these games, there is an urgency there because they have to complete these games before the first Doctor finishes the Trilogic game to get the TARDIS back so they can all escape the Toymaker's domain. Episode 4 is the one that is surviving, and yeah, I think the resolution for this story I'm a little bit confused by, but yeah, the resolution's a little bit weak for this story, and I think the first half of this story is a little bit slow when we start to get into the actual game within it, because I think the build-up of actually entering the Toymaker's domain and finding out about the Toymaker's domain is brilliant. I love all that stuff, but I think when we actually start to get into the sort of nitty-gritty of sort of Blind Man's Bluff, it sort of becomes a bit slow and goes on a little bit too long for my liking. And then episode 2, again, it's fine, but I think by episode 3 the story has really sort of found its feet and it sort of rattles along at a nice pace. So I think for Celestial Toymaker as a story, like I say, there's not really much when you say it out loud, but there's enough there to enjoy. So I think I'll give the Celestial Toymaker as a story an 8 out of 10. So let's talk about the animation, the main talking point of this release. So the animation is done by Shapeshifter Studios, who did the Web of Fear episode 3. Oh boy, that was my least favourite missing episode animation in the range. So I was a little bit apprehensive when they got announced to be doing the Celestial Toymaker, and I think from the teaser I was like, okay, this could work, because like I say, this is a very surreal story, very visual story. Let's see what creative license they can take within this story. And oh boy, they take creative license for this. If you are a purist and you like your missing episodes to be as intended, this animation isn't going to be for you. You know, you have this wonderful new photo reconstruction on this release, so that you can enjoy that. I think the animation is far better than the Web of Fear episode 3. I think there are still faults within it. I think the main character designs of our TARDIS crew, especially Peter Purvis, looks more like a young Bernard Cribbins from the Dalek Invasion of Earth movie. William Hartnell, it's passable. And I think the best likeness of the TARDIS crew is Jackie Lane Dodo. And I think Michael Gough's license pretty good, but it's interesting that they've sort of gone for this sort of very stylized, almost sort of quite carnival-esque sort of makeup on him. Going back to the character designs, this story, like I say, takes a huge lot of artistic license. If you thought the Macroterra took artistic license, this story blows it out of the water, because the character designs that they've done, I think, are very in keeping within the story, and I think you kind of can get away with this story with some of the likenesses, because it's all in the Toymaker's domain, so it's sort of all wacky and out there, so you can kind of forgive it a little bit. And I think where the artistic licenses are really quite strong, again, is some of the supporting characters, where we have the characters very much made up like toys, like Carla the Clown is this little soft toy clown. And I think the texturing for this is a lot better, because if you look at the texturing of the Yeti from Web of Fear to the texturing within this, there's a lot more life within this animation with the character designs, but all the characters feel like puppets and toys. Like the Sergeant character looks like a little porcelain soldier figure. Cyril's done up like a porcelain figure with sort of a chipped paint, and the sort of wood texture of the dancing dolls. It's done brilliantly. You can believe that these are actual toys. And one of my favourite artistic licenses within this is episode 2 with the King and Queen of Hearts. They're actually playing cards, and I think that they probably look like they belong in sort of a 2D sort of video game, and I think that that really adds to the sort of wacky, surreal nature of this story, and I think that really enhances this story, where you do feel uncomfortable by the visuals that you're seeing, because it's very out there and brilliant. And it did take me a little bit of time to get into the animation, to adjust to it, but the artistic licenses within this, especially episode 3, where we have sort of the Toymaker drinking orange juice from, you know, these TARDIS cartons, to the Toymaker sort of mouth opening and sort of seeing these cards, and the sort of dancing dolls on the TARDIS console room sort of zooming around. It's all done very well, but I think some of the character sort of models, they aren't very expressive. They're quite limited in sort of their expressions, and I think the lip syncing's a little bit out. But I think the visuals of this story with the games really enhances it, because I think because I watched the 3 colour animations and I watched the surviving episode 4, you really see how tightly crammed the space is. If you just look at how the animation did the TARDIS hopscotch to what we got in the actual episode, you can really admire the vision and scope that this story adds. The animation really adds to the story, and it enhances that sort of Toymaker's domain, that anything's possible, and I really like that. So I think the animation isn't perfect, but I think the creative choices within it are brilliant. I absolutely love it, so especially when we arrive in the Toymaker's domain, because it's really showing off what we can do with this animation. You know, with sort of the TARDISes flying around with the little screens. Yeah, you've just got to look at sort of how the games are presented in the recon to what we get in the animation. I think that this has a lot of visual flair and probably makes the story a lot more enjoyable. The lighting in episode 3, with sort of lighting in sort of Cook's kitchen, I think that's what's been missing in some of the recent animations, especially the Underwater Menace. This one has a lot more atmosphere to it, and I think that makes it even more sort of unsettling, especially in episode 3. But like I say, the character designs for the main TARDIS crew are probably where it's at its weakest, but I think the supporting characters, you know, it really makes it feel like we're in a world of toys. Anything's possible. We've got sort of jigsaw pieces flying in the background, you know, sort of transitioning from one game to the next with sort of these building blocks. It really goes all out and makes this feel like a massive sort of playground that anything's possible. So I think the animation really works for me within this. I think, like I say, there are little faults within it, but I think that this is a massive step up, and I think this story demanded these creative changes, and I think that this really goes for that sort of surreal nature within it. And you know, when we see sort of the first Doctor in the Celestial Toymaker playing the Trilogic game, it's just a white background, whereas now we have this vast void space where they're playing this game with this little doll's house. We have the Toymaker getting the dolls out to play with these characters, and we see a little glimpse of that in the surviving episode 4 with Cyril being this little doll. So I think that this really enhances that by making the characters toys, and I think that that is a very ingenious way. So I think the animation for me, for the most part, gets a thumbs up. On to the special features on the Celestial Toymaker DVD and Blu-ray. So the main features on this are on disc 2, which is the colour animation. So the main feature that I really enjoyed was the First Doctor escape room. Now this is going to be a little series on the collection Blu-rays, where we have Lisa Bowerman and Peter Purves and Maureen O'Brien tackling a Doctor Who themed escape room with Doctor Who themed puzzles, and K9 there to give them sort of little handy hints on how to solve these mysteries. So they've got 75 minutes to escape this, and there's a whole little story around it why they need to escape. And just getting the teasers of the other sort of TARDIS teams going up against it, you know, the Fifth Doctor one with it being Peter Davis and Sarah Sutton and Janet Fielding, that's going to be chaotic, and I can't wait to experience that. But yeah, this special feature will have you sort of screaming at your screen going, no, that monster doesn't go with that Doctor. It's all great, and I think that it's wonderfully crafted little feature, and the little puzzles are quite ingenious. And I'm very excited to see where the rest of that goes. Another feature within this is the only making of within this release is the making of the animation. There's no actual making of the actual story. I guess when the collection season 3 comes out, there'll be a massive sort of season 3 making of overview like they did with season 2 with the Flight Through Eternity. And that's quite a nice little feature to see the process of the animation and how sort of tight they were working to get this released. The other special features we have the VHS linking narration from the Hartnell years with Sylvester McCoy, which again is a nice little addition within it. We do have the reconstruction, like I said, on disc 1, which I think is a great little reconstruction, so if you're not a fan of the animation, don't worry, you have that. Then we have a Carmen Silver interview, which is a great little addition within it to get sort of a cast member from the actual story that isn't Peter Purves to talk about this story as well, and other things she's been in as well. But of course the main highlight for the special features has to be the escape room. So what are my overall thoughts on the Celestial Toymaker DVD, Blu-ray, Steelbook release? Well, I have to say it gets a thumbs up for me. I think the animation, though, is quite Marmite. You either are going to love it or you're going to hate it. I think for the most part the animation works. It really breathes a new life within the story. You get to see the creative vision what the 1960s team have, because it really shows that, you know, Doctor Who has such bold, ambitious ideas, and like I say, this is the first time Doctor Who does sort of surrealism within it, and I think that this animation really pushes that idea. The character animations, like I say, of the main TARDIS crew are probably the weakest. The supporting characters really make it feel quite unnerving and unsettling, almost quite sort of ragdoll-esque, which I think, you know, really plays within the story's strengths. The games feel more grander and grandiose than probably being quite a small set. Like I say, just look how the TARDIS hopscotch was done. I guess one minor little negative I have within this, obviously we've seen, I wouldn't say it's a little sort of a negative, it's more of a little thing of, that would have been nice to have. Obviously we've seen glimpses of episode 4 of the Celestial Toymaker in colour. It would have been great to have seen the episode 4 colourised within it, so you know, if you want to watch the animation you can have in colour, you can watch episode 4 in colour. I know how time consuming recolorization is, but seeing the sort of tease and the giggle and the Daleks in colour animation of seeing what it could look like in colour would be is brilliant, and it would have been nice to have seen the full thing. Talking of episode 4, the restoration of the final game is brilliant, a lot more improved than the Lost in Time version. It's a lot more cleaner and sharper, which is all very nice to have. But like I say, the animation is the main talking point. really makes the story come alive. I think the soundtrack, when I listen to it, it's a very visual story. It demands this style of animation, and I think that this, you know, makes the story become the lost classic that people probably have sort of built up to be over the years. So for me, though there's not much in terms of plot, the animation really enhances this release. So I think you should check out the Celestial Toymaker. You know, it's worth it for special features. I'm sure it'll probably go on iPlayer in a couple of years' time, and I'm sure it'll be on a collection set in whenever Season 3 is released. That's probably going to be one of the last collection sets to be released. But for me, it gets a massive thumbs up. And I really did enjoy it. I'm quite surprised how much I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's my favourite animation. That's still the Moonbase. Moonbase is king. But I think that this is a massive step up from the Web of Fear episode 3. So thank you very much for watching this review. If you've enjoyed this review, then please do like and subscribe for plenty more Doctor Who related content coming up in the near future. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.